I'm Tracy Ashbridge. This video is going to explain how do you know when you need to go and see an educational psychologist and what things can they do to help your child. So an educational psychologist specialises in children who are school age. Other psychologists, some of the clinical psychologists, may also be able to help your child if they do those types of assessment, if they do that type of therapy. But it really depends, and you'll need to make those conversations with local psychologists if you decide to do that. So they will look to help children with cognitive issues around learning. They will also help with children with social and emotional issues. So that might be anxiety, that might be difficulty making friends. Some of the children who have autism often see a psychologist regularly to help them learn those social skills. And they also learn how to emotionally regulate themselves. So when things go wrong at school, somebody says they don't want to play, what can I do? What words can I say so I don't just get upset about the issue? They can also do a number of tests. So when they do a cognitive assessment, normally the psychologist would do the WISC, spelled W-I-S-C, which gives us an idea of the child's IQ, how clever they are. They will also then do the test called the WIAT, W-I-A-T, and that one looks at their achievements. So it looks at how they're going in maths, how they're going in English, how they're going in reading, writing, talking, their oral language skills. So they're really important, and between those two tests that gives the psychologist a really good picture of what your child's strengths are, but also what their weaknesses are. And they're looking to see, is there a pattern that matches any particular disorder or learning difficulty? They may also do some additional questionnaires or some additional testing to look at other areas that have come to light either during the assessment or during the conversations you've had with the psychologist prior to doing the assessment. You may have flagged, for example, an attention difficulty, and they will then do additional assessments to look at, is there an attention difficulty and how severe is that and what do we need to do? So how do you go and see a psychologist? Well, in Australia, you pick up the phone and you ring someone. The GP may be able to give you some ideas of who to talk to. The school may well be able to give you ideas on who to talk to, but there's no formal referral required from a GP like there is to see a paediatrician. But the GP may be able to give you some financial support through Medicare, and that you'll just need to negotiate. Speak to the psychologist first and ask them what to say to your GP. If you're going to see a psychologist, this isn't something you do without really making a big commitment. So it's really important because there's a lot of money involved in going to see a psychologist. You're probably going to be spending $1,000, maybe a little bit more. So it's really important that you share everything you possibly can about your child's background, any previous diagnosis, any previous reports, to get the most out of the report and the most out of the assessment. You don't want to go to the assessment and not divulge information, because if you do that, that means that there's a big hole in the assessment, or the psychologist then does an extra assessment which you've already had done previously. So that's really important that you share that information, the background information, anything that's happened previously, any concerns you have. Make the most of the time that you have with that psychologist. People ask me, what can a psychologist diagnose? Well, they can diagnose a whole range of learning disorders, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. They can also diagnose some other learning disorders, but there's other things that they can't actually put the final stamp on. They have to have the final stamp on by a paediatrician. For example, if a child's diagnosed with attention difficulties, the psychologist will have done the investigation and done the assessment, but the paediatrician signs off on that diagnosis. Then also if a child is diagnosed with autism, the psychologist may be qualified to do the ADOS, which is a standard, gold standard assessment for autism. The psychologist may well do the assessment, but the paediatrician signs off. So again, like in the previous videos I've done about the allied health workers with occupational therapists and speech pathologists, they may feed information further together, and some diagnoses just need that multidisciplinary team to make sure the diagnosis is correct. Autism is a diagnosis for life, so you want to make sure that that diagnosis is done correctly and all the research was done before that diagnosis is made. So I hope this helps. In a future video, watch out for how to interpret that psychologist report once you've had your report done.